This is episode 300 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Dude, congratulations. You put up with my ass for 300 episodes. That happened.
For 300 episodes, we made it.
Yeah, we did. I can't believe it. Well, I guess I should believe it because you've been putting up with me since kindergarten. So if you can make it that long,
I think we're good to go from here on out.
Yeah, I think we are good to go, but that's kind of cool. I don't know that I ever thought that when we started this thing, we'd be still doing it 300 tries later.
No, it's one of those numbers that's so big that it's and so far out there that when you're doing a weekly show, that you don't really consider being that far along. So when it gets to, we've passed over some of the milestone shows or, barely recognized it when it get to 150, 200, but this feels significant. This is cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, likewise, man. And we have a big show in store for you guys today. Clearly because the Seahawks gifted us some actual news this offseason, so that's great.
We got three gifts. I counted them up for this show. Number one, the voice of the Seattle Seahawks, Steve Raible, is on this show, helping us to celebrate 300 episodes.
Yeah, and you guys will enjoy that interview. He is an incredibly nice guy. I couldn't believe just how nice he was just before and after the interview and just kind of chat with us. He hung out even a little after and kind of chit chatted for a while. It was great. Just an amazing guy.
We didn't get a chance to talk to him about this other big thing because this went down right after we talked to Steve.
Yeah, like what, an hour?
Gift number 2, the Seahawks trade for Jamal Adams. So we don't have to ruin episode 300 by talking about the stupid San Francisco 49ers. We can talk about an all-pro player that's coming to the Seahawks.
Hell yeah. And it's a huge trade. I would say, look, if I were to describe the trade, I would say it's either exciting or fun. And maybe try to not add value judgments to it at this point. But we'll talk more about that going forward here because the reactions are all over the map with this one.
It is. But I think that this is one of those things where some of those judgments, whether you're saying one thing or another thing, you're not wrong. So I think we'll get into those. And
I'm not sure about that.
And then that's what we'll get into.
Yeah.
But it does kind of take us to the third gift. And this is kind of a future gift. The Seahawks have now ensured that we don't have to complain about taking a running back or some player that we don't know in the first round of the draft for the next 2 years.
That's exactly right. We don't have to complain about how I didn't know that guy before they drafted him and that he just came out of nowhere. So that'll be fun. And we don't have to, do our regular hand wringing over who we're going to pick at the end of the first round, which we usually never do anyways.
Right.
So
should we even watch the first round when we know that they're going to trade out of the first round anyway? What's the point? And now, people who are in the UK, this is a gift to you. You don't have to stay up till the middle of the night watching, for the end of the first round of the draft. So, there's positives in all of this.
Oh, and the biggest takeaway, the biggest positive, Brandon, is that this now eliminates us from almost every mock draft for the next 2 years. So I don't have to see those stupid headlines. I'm very excited about that aspect.
Yeah. The mock drafts, you'll get the final mock drafts or the 7-round mock drafts still but that doesn't usually happen until, March, April ahead of the draft. So you're good for quite a few months now.
Yeah. It really saved me a lot of consternation, the Schneider is. So I'm excited about that.
Well, let's get into it. The big trade coming down on Saturday. The Seahawks receive Jamal Adams. They get a 4th-round pick as well in 2022 from the Jets, and they send over a 1st-round pick in 2021, a 3rd-round pick in 2021, and a 1st-round pick in 2022. And they send over Bradley McDougald, one of our guys, but a huge upgrade in Jamal Adams.
He is a very significant upgrade from McDougald, and that's not to take anything away from him. And I did kind of want to start out a little bit, talking about McDougald and what he had done for us the last couple of years, and really just brought some competent stability to the safety position for us. And that was needed through a couple of years there of transition, and not at a cost that, we couldn't afford as you're starting to shed the salaries of Sherman and Thomas and Cam and a lot of those big money contracts. It was great having him, and it worked for the time, but this move definitely upgrades that position, which I think is huge for the team. But ultimately, the reactions, like we talked about, a little all over the board. And I think it's because this trade's a little bit of a Rorschach test, right? Like sure. It's kind of like whatever it is you want to see in this, you'll see in it. Now, whether that's an all-in move or it's a desperation move or it's shrewd or you overpaid or, safety's worth it or not or whatever, all of your beliefs kind of come forward in this trade. And so you see a little bit of what the Seahawks believe in this trade. And I think that's kind of fun.
Well, we can talk through it then, because I'm curious to see what parts of that Rorschach test that you see, because I do see the fact that the Seahawks overpaid. I don't see it as a desperation overpayment, but they did overpay. I mean, 2 first-round picks, you're talking, especially when you compare it to the types of players where in the past went for 2 first-round pick. It's generally on the offense. When it's on the defense, it's been for a pass rusher or an elite corner. So this is really the first time where we've seen a safety go at the 2 first-round pick level. So I think it's okay to think that they overpaid, but I think it's also okay to think that the other part of it too of, okay, they overpaid in mystery boxes, which is what I think of draft picks, because you don't know what you're going to get. And I could be okay with that.
I completely disagree with the idea that it's an overpayment. A steep price, yes, but you're absolutely getting value for value here. And this is where I think it all kind of begins for me, is where you value the safety position. And I've been talking about this offseason way before we even got involved in any of this Jamal Adams stuff.
Because we talked about this with Jamal Adams versus Chris Jones.
Right. And so you say, well, on defense, historically, the only people to ever have 2 first-round picks traded for them are either defensive ends, elite pass rushers, or corners, elite corners. And sure, that's a true fact, no doubt about it. But I value safety, I think, at this point in the league higher than I do corner. And mainly the reason is that you're able to do more as a safety, and especially getting everybody lined up and just kind of being the quarterback of the back end of the defense and being able to really play the run both inside and out, being able to play the slot, being able to take up tight ends, people like George Kittle and things like that in coverage, being able to be sent on blitzes on the regular and actually create pressure. A safety is a Swiss Army knife of a player, and I've felt that their value has been appreciated over the past 10 years or so. I think they're a tone setter. I think they're one of the major, a lot of people say middle linebackers, quarterback, the defense, but I believe the safety's right there with them. Mm-hmm. And without that guy, especially in this scheme, you're a little lost defensively. And I think their value is much higher than, say, a guy who just shuts down 1/3 of the field. A premium safety can shut down all area of the fields at almost all time.
And you really are getting the premium safety in the case of Jamal Adams. It's not like you're trading for a very good one. You're trading for a guy who was an all-pro. He was all-pro along with Minkah Fitzpatrick, who happened to be available via trade last year, too. The Seahawks were able to make that deal. I think it had more to do with the fact that, because what was it that was the Steelers had a much higher pick to offer in the draft, I believe. Mm-hmm. Well, the season wasn't over yet, but you could all see that the Seahawks were going to finish higher in the standings than the Steelers at that point. Ben Roethlisberger was injured at that point of the season. It made a whole lot more sense for the Dolphins to make that trade, to send Fitzpatrick to the Steelers rather than to Seattle if they were anywhere close in terms of the compensation. So I think maybe that's what people are looking at in terms of value and say, well, gosh, the Steelers got an all-pro safety for 1 first-round pick, just a few months ago, and now the Seahawks are giving up 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, and I understand that idea because that does feel apples to apples, right? When you're first looking at it, Minkah Fitzpatrick, all-pro safety. He had 1 first-rounder trade for him, right? So you say those words, and yes, that's all true. But not all first-round picks are created equal. That's why there's draft charts and draft value and all that. And it's been beat to the ground, so I don't think we need to really get huge into it. But the Seahawks have picked perennially here for the past 10 years in the bottom half of the first round. And I think it's very likely that they are going to continue to do that over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. So that pick that the Steelers gave, as you eloquently pointed out, was going to be a much higher pick in the top 15, where you have an opportunity to get some of those elite players that are slam dunks guaranteed for the most part, as much as you can in a draft, right? And so the way I see it, when people say it's an overpay, it's like, well, what are the kind of traditional values of going from, say, the 25th pick to the 12th pick? Well, it's going to take you 2 firsts. Right. And probably a second or a third. Right. Like, that's kind of where we're at.
Well, and that's why I look at this deal too. And some of the people who are dumping on this trade a little bit are some of the same people who would have said, hey, in the 2020 draft, why don't we pair a future first round pick with our current first round pick and move up into the top 15 and get a guy who is a potential impact player? You know, maybe you could have traded up to 13 overall with the Bucks and gotten Javon Kinlaw ahead of the San Francisco 49ers and had an impact on the defensive line. But the difference is, in this case, instead of trading for a guy like Kinlaw, who he may or may not work out, I mean, talented player, made it into the top 15. San Francisco's been good at picking defensive linemen historically. But you are getting a known player now. This isn't 2 first-round picks for a player who may or may not work out, as we've seen plenty of top 15 picks flame out and not work out in the NFL. This is a player, you know, he has Pro Bowl level seasons. He has an all-pro season, second team all-pro season, and he's only 25. You know that you're going to be able to sign him long-term. Okay, you're going to have to pay him. If you're paying the top guy at his position, it's not the contract negotiations are a little bit easier. Sure. Do you want to get the franchise tag this year, franchise tag again next year? Okay, that's our starting point. And maybe we'll give you a little bit more. You're the highest paid guy. There you go.
Yeah, those can be a little more simple in the way that they go down. Now, I think the biggest thing when people complain about the value here is it's a difference in the way you like to experience risk. And so for you and I think we see this very similarly. The risk of bringing in Jamal Adams in terms of can he play or can he not play, that's pretty much at a 0, right? I mean,
he can play.
We know this guy is a top tier NFL talent and is a total just badass on the field, right? That is already proven. The film is out there. So that's a risk that is mitigated doing it this way. Now, however, you said you do have to pay him. And it's like, okay, well, we've already found out he's going to play on his rookie deal for the first year. Mm-hmm. All right. So you still get 1 more year of the cheap contract that you would get if you had drafted a guy, right? So the difference being is that you have to pay him over the next 4 years. Whereas with the drafted guy, you get him on the cheap contract for 4 years, right? And then you have to redo it. So we're talking a difference of about 3 years that you have to pay the guy. To me, I'd rather pay those 3 years and know I got a badass who is, like you said, 25 than draft a guy who you think is going to be a badass, but you don't have to pay him those 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Well, and there's another element of risk too, that I think people who are on the more downside of this trade is that your risk is that one of your players could get hurt. You could have a catastrophic type of injury to the team that lands you in the top 15 picks, either this season or next season, maybe both seasons. You just don't know what could happen. And then they're saying, well, if we were in the top 15, then you could use those picks for elite level talent. But that's a big what if. I would rather take the track record of, hey, we've been in the upper 20s and beyond these past, ever since Russell Wilson came to the team. Health has been generally good enough to finish in that spot. That's a risk I think I'm willing to accept.
Yeah, the people that, and I heard, and I love Rob. I think he's great. I listened to you guys' interview. We are of very different minds in this particular sense. And I think a lot of it is too, is that he is such a draft guy that draft capital has so much more value to him than it does to me. So I think that's probably where our differences start.
Rob likes mystery boxes more than you like mystery boxes.
That's I give a crap about mystery boxes. We figure it out. Right. So the thing is, the people that are so worried, and I heard Rob say it, well, geez, Russ could get injured over the next 2 years.
I was trying. I'm trying to say it in a way that keeps Russ's name out of it, Adam, but it also, you say a catastrophic injury that has an impact on the team that makes them finish toward the bottom. Then you don't have to say his name. People know what we're talking about, but we don't have to say his name.
All right, fine. So non-named player gets hurt, and that tanks your one of your next 2-3 seasons or next 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
These are the same people that worry about that, are the ones that put their children in bubbles and like roll them around because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. They're the people that, are probably risk assessment people for insurance companies, right? And are afraid of everything. They're the people that, see getting out of bed in the morning as a giant risk to their lives. It's absurd. Like, you can't live your life thinking, oh no, our best player could get hurt and then those draft picks are actually worth something. BS, man. Yeah, you have your best player in his prime, ready to rock right now. And as much as everybody wants to crap on the offensive talent that's around Russell Wilson, it's actually pretty damn good when you really start thinking about it. I mean, just look at this top 100 that just happened. I mean, there's both of our outside receivers. They happen to be in there. I'm just saying. So there's talent out there for him to work with on the offensive side of the ball. If you want to support Russell Wilson, if you want to help him maximize his prime, have a defense that actually takes their points per game down about 5 to 7 points per game. Do that. Make it so that Russ doesn't have to score 45 points a game. Maybe he only has to score 30 to go 13-3 and get a first round bye. And that's what they're trying to do here with Jamal Adams. They bringing him in as a guy that can actually impact the defense in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other argument that you hear against that then is, well, why didn't they go out and get a pass rusher then? Because if you're using that many picks, go and get a pass rusher, because that's what the Bears did when they went out and got Khalil Mack for 2 first-round picks. And this trade is pretty comparable to that one.
Sure. Which pass rusher out there right now, Brandon? Is of Khalil Mack, Von Miller type talent that's available for trade? Which one?
I bet if you threw 2 first-round picks at the Broncos, they would give up Von Miller.
Nope.
I think they would.
I can tell you right now, they won't. Von Miller is going to be a Bronco for life. You can actually write that down in stone.
Just looking at the top defensive ends, let's just go down the list. Nick Bosa for the 49ers. Yeah, you're not getting him. Cameron Jordan for the New Orleans Saints. They're in the middle of a playoff run. They want to keep him on the team with Drew Brees. You're not getting him. Von Miller. I do think that you could get Von Miller.
I don't think you can. I honestly don't.
Khalil Mack, the Bears aren't giving up him.
I bet you the offer's already been made to the Broncos that is similar in value to what we gave up for Adams. And then not only that, but Von's old in comparison.
That's why I don't think you would give up 2 first-rounders for Vaughn, because he is on the older end. Just looking at the top 100 list, Jamal Adams is at number 27. It's 1 spot ahead of Richard Sherman and 1 spot behind Von Miller. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea of the company that he's in. And when you look at some of the younger players, okay, TJ Watt's a couple spots ahead of him, a couple spots behind, younger player like Quentin Nelson, guard for the Colts. So that gives you an idea of some of the names that he's up there with. So Joey Bosa on the list at 34. He just got a huge deal. You're not getting Joey Bosa from the Chargers. So unless
that
you're
elite pass rusher is just not available.
No,
he was the year when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack. That player happened to be available.
Maybe JJ Watt, but again, on the older side, on the injured side, I don't think you would want to give up 2 first-round picks for Watt at this point in his career.
No, and you probably wouldn't have to. I mean, it's Bill O'Brien, right? But but with that said,
and that plays into another part of it too. When you're paying the veteran guys, you're looking at a salary cap issue that is, upwards of $15 to $20 million per year. The way they did the deal with Bradley McDougald, they actually save money under the salary cap because McDougald was set to make more this year than Jamal Adams was.
Right. It's not a bunch of money.
No,
it's a tiny
like
bit.
600,000 to 800,000. It's less than $1 million, but still.
Right.
They did that deal. They cut Joey Hunt. They cut Brandon Jackson from the team. Those under restricted free agent contracts. And when you talk about being shrewd, that's a shrewd type of deal for John Schneider as the general manager, because here you were a couple months ago saying, hey, we think you're worth this certain amount of money. And yes, it's not guaranteed money, but to tell a guy that you're worth this, and then a couple months later go, oh yeah, well, things changed in the last couple months. Sorry. It's a shrewd deal.
It is a shrewd deal. And you feel like Schneider here is setting things up for that one last move. And it's got to be a defensive lineman of some kind. And it is infuriating. And I think this is why some of the people have had a real problem with this trade. It is infuriating as a fan to sit on the sidelines and see them make these ancillary, secondary moves to help the pass rush, right? Bruce Irvin, Benson Mayowa, great complemental pass rushers. And then you bring in Adams, who, yes, he had 6.5 sacks last year, but come on now. Let's not expect that.
It would have led the team, Adam, in sacks.
I understand. If he has 3 next year, that would be a huge season. So the idea that, you're doing all these pieces around the pass rush, but not quite trading for Dunbar, but you still haven't addressed it, is unbelievably frustrating.
And I think that's what some of Rob's frustration was too, because he brought up the deal for Calais Campbell going to the Ravens as, a 5th round pick. And you do look at that as a Seahawks fan and go, really? We couldn't have given up a 4th or a 3rd to get Calais Campbell in Seattle?
I don't know that they were ever even aware of that move. That seems like one that maybe they just weren't in the discussions.
Or maybe Campbell, that's just where he wanted to go. And Jacksonville said, okay, we'll make that happen because we're going to cut you anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it could very well be that. But it is frustrating. I would love to see that. It feels like he's clearing the decks a little bit to make that signing. And I mean, whether it's Griffin or Clowney, that seems to be kind of your only 2 DNs that really are of that status, right? Of the kind of game wrecker kind of players. And then I think you have to pay a lot less for Griffin. I'd love to see Griffin and then one of the D tackles that are available, because there's some older guys out there that I think would still have a little bit in the tank, and you're not relying on them as a down in, down out guy, because D tackle is a rotational position, right? And we have enough guys, bodies, right? We just need one more like very solid guy there.
Yeah.
So I'd like Griffin and one of the D tackles. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And then you combine that with Adams, and now you're looking at a defense that's pretty scary.
You want Griffin. I'd be much happier with Clowney if they could, if the money is similar, obviously, but
I don't think
maybe the money wouldn't be.
I don't think it is. My sense is you get Clowney and then you're done, or you would get Griffin and then maybe another guy at a veteran minimum at D tackle. I think you could probably do that. And I could be wrong. I mean, they may be able to do both with Clowney too, but that's kind of my sense of it. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I mean, then you start looking at this secondary and you're like, well, holy smokes. Okay. We got, probably the best safety tandem in the league, and Diggs and Adams, right?
I think the only one that is kind of in the conversation would be the Vikings safety tandem, right?
Sure. They're up there. And then you look at Griffin as an ascending player. I mean, he had a great season last year. Now, I understand he's not a big interceptions guy.
Sure.
And that might not ever be his game, but he is sticky in coverage and he does lock down his half of the field. I mean, he's not Richard Sherman. We can't ever expect him to be Richard Sherman. He's Shaquille Griffin, right? He's a different guy.
Yeah. You aren't going to hear us say the words Legion of Boom 2.0, except to say that we're not going to say those words, because that's not what this is going to be.
Slow your roll. I mean, it's going to be very different.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's fun.
Diggs isn't Earl Thomas. Adams isn't Cam Chancellor. Griffin isn't Sherman. It's never going to be that. But you at least have something that resembles a secondary that's going to be top 5 in the NFL.
Yeah, high-end secondary, top 5, top 10, something like that, right? And then you look at Trey Flowers, and I know a lot of people are down on him. I might be the only one in the, hey, I think Trey Flowers is going to have a great season at right corner camp. Just given the history of Seattle DBs over the course of time, it usually is that 3rd year that they really start putting it together. I look for Trey Flowers to have a great season there at right corner. And then if by some miracle Dunbar actually plays for this team,
who was put on the commissioner exempt list here just these last few days,
you got a hell of a secondary, man. Mm-hmm. Not to mention your depth pieces in Blair. And that was another thing that Rob talked about, was like, well, I mean, now you bring in Adams, and so you're basically declaring Blair a bust. And it's like, are we?
Well, I think that leads us into a question that Corey from our Ring of Honor Facebook page brought up in the group. It's the question of how are they going to work Adams in along with the other pieces of the secondary in terms of depth. He says, I believe Jamal is going to be used a lot in nickel. We've been curious as to who will be at nickel outside of Amadi. Use Blair as our strong safety on big nickel sets. That way the Seahawks can put Jamal closer to the line of scrimmage. With Adams closer to the line of scrimmage, he can blitz, cover tight ends, which is something we've sorely needed on the defense. And another weapon the linemen and running backs have to account for on the opposing offenses. So he says, I think with the additions of Adams, Brooks, Taylor, and Irvin, we've added a lot of speed and attitude on this defense again.
Yeah, I actually like where his head's at on that. I mean, I do think that there is a lot of added speed, and I think there's a lot of added versatility. And that's when Rob was saying, well, that means this is giving up on Blair. I kind of see it differently. I think Pete's been itching to find a way to have some really good 3 safety sets that he can trot out there. Boy, that's something that can disguise a lot of different looks, just personnel wise, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, because those guys can be so interchangeable because safeties can do a little bit of everything. So I kind of see the idea that in more running situations, you could have Blair out there at strong, you could have Diggs at free, and then you have Jamal as just a catfish, the play up guy. Yeah. He could be anywhere. He could be doing honey badger things. He could be doing Palomalu type things. And that's another thing that I want to bring up in terms of value. Would you have traded 2 first-round picks for Palomalu at age 25, knowing what he was? Would you have done that as a GM of any team at that time?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing when I was watching his top 100 film reel and people comparing him in his prime to Troy Polamalu. And I'm like, okay, I'm sold. I'm in.
I love it when I have thoughts about these things and then other people that know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, like actual NFL players.
Yeah, and it kind of backs it up. When I finally got into the Jamal Adams tape and everything and looked at it, the number one player that came to mind was Polamalu.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so smart. Like, I remember a game that the Steelers played the Broncos and Manning comes to the line and he's doing his Omaha, check, this, that, and the other thing, doing all of his stuff. And then Polamalu just kind of looks around and goes, okay, we're doing this now. And he audibles. And you can see Peyton get flustered. He's like, well, ba-doo. And he starts doing more audibles. And Polamalu's like, well, I see your move here and I raise you this. And he makes another audible. And then you just see Peyton just get pissed. And he just finally just calls a timeout. Like, with his fingers together, and he just walks off the field, just stares down Polamalu. That's the type of player Adams is. He's that kind of cerebral guy with the physicality and athleticism to back it up to make himself a great player. And so I think you could have him as the play up kind of guy, Blair strong safety, Diggs at free, and then in more passing situations, have Blair and Adams at the back end and have Diggs playing that slot corner kind of situation because he has more experience doing that.
Yeah, they do have some flexibility when it comes to that. And I'm glad you brought up all the dynamics that Adams brings to the defense, because that's one thing that stood out. Samuel Gold of Sam's Film Room, he went on field goals and did one of his 17-minute videos on Adams. And that was one of the things that really stood out in a lot of the clips that Sam was showing is Jamal Adams' ability to diagnose, when they do some misdirection type plays, which the 49ers are known for doing, which the Rams are known for doing. You have Kyler Murray in Arizona. So his ability to diagnose some of those misdirections and go straight for the tackler, it's pretty impressive.
It really is. And one of the biggest, I'd say the 2 biggest weaknesses we had last year was pass rush and getting gashed by the run outside. Mm-hmm. And Jamal Adams helps with the run part. Absolutely. So does Brooks, right? Yeah. Get him out there with his speed and his ability to diagnose those things. I think that's huge, especially against the 49ers. Now, he can also help the pass rush, and I think we can see a little more blitzing, a little more versatility that way.
And you don't know if it'll come from Adams. It could come from Bobby. It could come from Brooks. Yeah, it gives some flexibility there, too.
Right. Would I have rather seen some pass rush help at some point here? Yes, but you've also made one of the units on your football team one of the elite units in the NFL, and that is the secondary with this addition. And that is definitely a way to go about building teams. And it is not a desperation move to me. It is a go for it move to me. That's what this feels like to me.
And they should be in go for it mode. And I think we've seen that last year with the Clowney trade. It gives me confidence knowing that they are going for it. I was listening to the interview that John Schneider did with Peter King. And it was kind of funny because Rob brought up the fact that, hey, with the college game being what it is, who knows how that's going to impact the draft in the future. And it was funny to hear that come up in the Peter King interview with John Schneider, too, because and it was kind of at the end, Schneider kind of threw it out as a little bit of a joke because King was asking him, what he thinks that could happen with college games potentially moving to the spring and how that could impact the draft. And if he has any concerns about it, he said something to the effect of, hey, when you have concerns about it, that's when you trade a first and a third round pick.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I thought that was a very insightful thing that Rob had brought up, the idea of the uncertainty going into this next draft. And I think that makes this move look even a little better when you really kind of break it down. But I do like this team's chances with this move. And, if people are saying, well, why are you going all in? You're too many pieces away. You're not that close to winning a Super Bowl. Well, they were within an eighth of an inch of sweeping the 49ers, having the number 1 seed and having the privilege to play in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. And I mean, the Niners are the team that took them all the way to the fourth quarter, and it took a miraculous comeback for a Super Bowl win. And you were an eighth of an inch away from replacing that team in that scenario.
Yeah.
And you tell me that they don't have a shot to win with Jamal Adams? Yes. Does this make them a Super Bowl contender? No, because they already were. But does this make it more likely? Sure.
Again, I would still like a move or two on the defensive line. I think we all would. And criticizing that, I think, doesn't take away from the fact that you got an outstanding player in the secondary that is going to immensely help this team.
In your bones, do you feel like Schneider is going to bring in some more D-line help?
At no point in time we've seen in the past, is Schneider done? Does he get to a certain point of the season and you can say, oh, well, this is probably the team that we have? No, it was in the middle of the season last year when he went out and got Quandre Diggs. So, even if now not having those first round picks, that could take away from the idea that, you get 2-3 weeks into the season and you can find a guy who could significantly impact the pass rush. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if you're going to get a guy to impact the pass rush, it's going to have to be Griffin. It's going to have to be Clowney. Those are the two guys left. And even if you're looking at a team like, I guess you could look at a team like the Ravens or like the Jaguars with Yannick Ngakoue and say, hey, maybe that deal for Ngakoue is still there for a similar type of deal that you did for Clowney last year. That could still happen.
That could still happen for sure. And we're starting to see roster cuts, right? And some teams have cut down to 80 players, some 90, depending on how they wanted to do things. And there's always that surprise cut of a guy that you didn't think would come available, but then does. And I think some of the delay here is Schneider waiting through all of that process to unfold to see if there's any extra shrewd moves, right, to find out there. And, kind of going from there. Also, too, let's not think that they don't feel like they're set kind of at defensive line. I mean, let's talk about who's on the roster and who you think is going to make it and not. I mean, look, last year when they started in week 1, they had 9 defensive linemen on the roster. So you start going down the roster here, and to me, if I'm looking at it, Brandon, these are the guys who are, say, absolute locks, and there's other guys that I think could very much make the team. But these are my locks, right?
Yeah.
I think Collier, Rasheem Green, Benson Mayowa, Poona Ford, Taylor, the draft pick, and Jaron Reed. Now, if you consider Irvin more of a defensive end than a linebacker, they have him listed at linebacker, that gives you 7. So 6 or 7 dudes. So that leaves 2 to 3 spots that are kind of up for grabs. I could see Robinson very much being one of those guys that makes a team, and maybe even DeMarcus Christmas.
Or Brian Monet. I mean, flip a coin on those guys.
Right. So that's going to leave you 1 to 2 spots open on the D line total. That's kind of where they feel like they're at.
So maybe they are done. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know that they feel like they're that far away, right?
Yeah, and depending on how some of the players like Clowney and Everson Griffin want to play the preseason, or, what would normally be the preseason, the training camp weeks leading up to the season, they may want to say, hey, sign me with a week to go ahead of week one. Yeah. And I'll come in and I'll do what I need to do, because what do I really need to learn to rush the passer? And a guy like Clowney, he doesn't need to learn anything at all because he was with the team last year.
Exactly. And I would very much like to see Clowney come in still. I would. And I don't think it's an impossibility. I really don't. I mean, I know you see those reports and all that, but he would be that kind of last piece with everything now coming together.
Yeah. That
would feel really good. And let's not forget, I mean, there is a chance that Collier flashes this year, or that Taylor flashes this year. Maybe they use Keem a little bit more. I mean, we saw him last year be kind of a cool little player to put in there in pass rushing situations. And Irvin is better than a lot of people really give credit for. It's going to be very interesting, but I don't think they need 3-4 guys on the D line. I think they're looking at one.
If they sign Clowney,
yeah, how
many fans among the 49ers, the Cardinals, and the Rams fans are they really Catfish in their pants?
Well, if they haven't already Catfish them and washed them going into this year, boy, they better get after it, because we haven't talked Niners yet, and we'll probably hold that to the next episode, but that is going to be a very interesting year.
Yeah, we don't need to overly talk 49ers in this show, because this is episode 300. I'm glad this happened.
Yes, me too. No, there's clearly only two teams that are worth a pinch in this division. I know everybody says it's the best division of football and all that. The Rams are trash. The Cardinals are trash. Basically, it's the Niners and the Hawks right now, with only one team having sustained success over the course of a decade. The other one blipping in and out now and then, Niners. So I find this next upcoming season for them very interesting. A lot of things to overcome. I think they're legitimately Catfish, but we'll get to that.
How about we get to, Adam, our interview with Steve Raible? I'm fired up about the part of this episode because we get to talk to Raible about the origin of Holy Catfish and just how that's been a part of this show. And gosh, what a fun guy to talk to. Let's get right to it.
It's going to be Catfish. Awesome.
Joining us on the show as part of our episode 300 celebration, he's the voice of the Seattle Seahawks. He was drafted in the second round of the 1976 NFL draft at 59 overall, 58 spots ahead of another Seahawks legend, Steve Largent. Steve Raible joins us. Thanks for coming on the show.
Brandon, thank you. It's always great to be here. Adam, good to see you. And I might have been drafted ahead of Steve Largent, but that's where the comparison ends right there.
I feel like you have bragging rights, though. Like, is there any like a hierarchy among rookies back then where you're like, hey, Rook, I know we're both rookies, but I was picked ahead of you.
Now, I'll tell you a great story. Largent, of course, was drafted by Houston, then the Oilers, and not by us. So we had been in training camp about, we had been in training camp for probably 4 weeks over in Cheney before we ever broke camp to come over to the west side of the mountains and to start practice during our preseason games. In those days, there were 6 preseason games, not 4. And I remember my offensive coordinator, a guy named Jerry Rome, was the quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, and wide receivers coach all in one. There were like 7 coaches on the entire team in those days. Now there's like 25 or more. And so Jerry said, he came to practice one day and he said, we have a chance to get this kid that I coached at Tulsa. And he said, he's a good little receiver. And he said, you guys will like him. The next day he shows up. He's standing on the porch at our old practice facility, which was in Kirkland, where Carillon Point is now. That was our practice facility right on the water. And he was standing on sort of the back porch area just off the locker room. He was looking out over the field. And Sam McCullum, one of our receivers, myself, a couple of other guys saw him. And we just sort of, said hi, and we kept on. After practice, we're out there throwing passes. And Zorn says, Rabes, run me a quick slant. Well, I ran a quick slant. I stumbled. The ball hit my hands, bounced off my helmet, went straight up in the air. And Largent looked at the guy he was standing next to and said, I can make this team. And that is a true story. And Steve Largent came in, and while he didn't start that very first day, it wasn't long before he was starting and on his way to a Hall of Fame career. I'm just glad I had a chance for my 6 seasons to play with a guy like him, because not only was he a great football player, but a terrific guy and a terrific leader. And I learned a lot from him.
Well, and Steve had a famous nickname, too. He was known as Yoda. I'm curious, what was your nickname back then?
Peach.
Peach.
I went to Georgia Tech.
Right.
So Georgia, Peach. Sam McCullum was Magic because the way he could get in and out of his breaks. Dave Craig was Mudbone on account of nobody could think of anything to call him. So somebody just made up Mudbone and it stuck. And to this day, he hates it. If you walked up to him and said, Mudbone, how you doing? He
doesn't like that, huh?
No. And in fact, I went back to visit. We played the Washington, the team in Washington.
Yeah, the football team.
The football team in Washington, as it will be known from here on out, many years ago. And Largent was a member of Congress at that time. So I, from where we were staying, I caught the light rail, the subway, and went over to his congressional office building. Walked up, in those days it was, kind of open, able to just sort of walk in, walk past security, say hi. And I found his office, and I kind of looked in the door. The door was open from the hallway there. And there were a number of constituents, and he had some of his staff people in there. And Steve was kind of tucked around the corner a little bit. So I stuck my head in, and I kind of walked in halfway, and I saw him, and our eyes met, and I said, Yoda. And 3 of his handlers almost came apart. They almost came unglued. They said, you can't talk to the congressman that way. Listen, I knew this guy before he was anybody. And so we sat down and kind of closed the door and chatted for about 20 minutes. And it was great. And I was really proud of him. And I was glad that he lasted as long as he did in a place like DC, because they chew you up and spit you out. But he's just a terrific guy and still a great friend. We talk, we text. He's one of a kind.
Well, you've lasted quite a while in the news game, and after 38 years at Cairo and Seattle, you've now retired. And I think it's an important qualifier for Seahawks fans to know you're not retiring from calling Seahawks games. But how's retirement been for you here these last few weeks? It's
been interesting. I broadcast, first of all, for almost 3 months from my living room because of COVID. So we brought in camera equipment and lights and laptop computers, and had to set it up in such a way that we could, there was no teleprompter, but I could at least follow my laptop and see where we were on the rundown and what script was next and what's my. And so all those things, we finally technically got it all figured out. And then I got to be home for 3 months broadcasting. And it was, and I hate it because it was because of COVID, but it was the best preparation for retirement, because I found out I really enjoy being at home. 38 years of basically having 2 jobs on the weekends for 6 months and traveling every other weekend or thereabouts. And then for the other rest of the year, I'd say a 9 to 5, but mine was 2 to midnight was my shift, basically anchoring all the newscasts. So to be able to be at home and so far Sharon hasn't kicked me out. She's been quite, at least she says she's happy with having me here. And then if we have a football season, we can starting to get prepared for that. But I have become quickly grown accustomed to being retired, and I can do the things I want to do, and I don't have to live by the clock. And as you guys know, when you're in this business, that's everything. At 5 o'clock, at 5:30, at 6, at 7, and at 11, I know where I'm going to be 5 days a week. It's kind of nice to be out of that grind now.
So, Steve, with the COVID situation and everything going on right now and the potential of having a season coming up here, has there been discussions about how that's going to affect you in maybe the way you travel or how you call a game, or are you going to be there in person? Have there been any discussions about that?
Yeah. Well, you guys know, because being involved, being around the Seahawks, being around the organization, you understand there is nothing that gets more scrutiny and look at every option. Nobody does that more than coaches and an organization like the Seahawks. So we have talked about everything from how do I travel to doing the games from right where I'm sitting now. and having a bank of monitors and looking at the video being fed to us. We've talked about doing the home away games from a studio and doing the home games from down at the stadium, but with social distancing. And might it be possible for me to broadcast with a surgical mask as opposed to a cloth mask? I mean, we have talked about every eventuality. I don't know which it's going to be yet. I don't think the organization knows yet. Chuck Arnold was on the president, CEO of the Seahawks, was on our Zoom meeting here an hour ago. And he said he has every hope that everybody will be there next Tuesday and they'll be able to start getting the guys ready. We know that there are going to be no preseason games. But even he said, we're still in talks with the Players Association, and we're trying to nail down some of the ancillary issues. They feel like they've got the safety thing figured out. He said there's no safer building on the planet than the VMAC right now. But, we have to look at every possibility. So I'll be prepared to, yell touchdown Seahawks or holy catfish sitting right here, or if I'm lucky to be able to do it either from the studios of our flagship station and then the home games. I really hope we're able to at least be able to go to CenturyLink and in some form or fashion be able to call the games there.
So how does having no preseason games then impact you specifically? Because you won't have an opportunity, I suppose, to whatever format you ultimately decide. Are you going to be right in it week one, or are you going to maybe have a chance to do it with past film? And does that kind of go into how you prepare for a normal season anyway?
Yeah, preseason for me was always really important because even though everybody talks about, well, they don't count and the last game is all rookies, but there is something good about that because you get another chance, just as the coaches have an extra chance to look at players in game situations. I have another chance to kind of look at them, to start to get my wheels turning and remembering, okay, a little bit more about this young kid. Where did he come from? Boy, does he look good out here in this situation. Maybe this veteran is not so solid after all when you got a guy pushing him like that. I mean, had we not had 4 preseason games and he not had the opportunity to show everything he could do, would Doug Baldwin have stuck with the team? I mean, he's a great example of a kid who literally – John Schneider knew who he was. Pete Carroll knew who he was, and the coaches did. None of us did, really. I follow the Husky football, but I don't follow Stanford all that closely. So I didn't know really how good he was. And he got better as his career went on because of all those opportunities, whether it was in preseason or regular season. He played special teams as a rookie. So here's a kid who really had to grow into the role and then became one of the great receivers in Seahawks history. So it's going to hurt the young players. I don't have any question about that. We'll be able to see them in practice. I'll be able to talk to coaches. I don't know that they'll give me cut-ups, the video that they cut up and look at in practice every day. I don't think I'm going to be, they'll let me look at those. But at least I'll be able in some way, shape, or form to see them some at practice and to chat with coaches. And then we'll just find out, if it's going to be tougher for those guys, though, than it will be the draft choices, no question.
Well, Steve, one of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on as part of episode 300 of this show was to thank you for really, and probably unknowingly, I'm guessing, for being a part of this show in such a big way. I found a clip. I went back in our archives to episode 105, and it was an episode that we did after Marshawn Lynch announced his retirement, and we did a tribute show for him. And one of the clips in this was maybe what you would call an iconic clip now, because it's a reason why you're both a big part of this show with your holy catfish call. And in this clip, it'll actually explain why it became part of our show. Holy catfish. That's become a big part of this show, right?
Oh, yeah.
We use catfish to censor ourselves in the same way we think Steve Raible was doing yes. when he called this play from Marshawn. But I think some people may not remember the actual play that Holy Catfish was from. We remember the game, I think. We remember Richard Sherman running into the end zone with one shoe. But
I was going to say, it's Texans game, right?
It's the Texans game. And the other memorable moment was this run up the sideline early in the game.
Back at the 2.5-yard line, Wilson under center. He's going to hand it off to Lynch, who looks for some running room. He breaks free across the 10, 15, cuts outside, 20, chased from behind, knocked, still on his feet, 30, 35, still going 40, still going 45. Holy catfish, what a run out to the 45-yard line. J.J. Wright, the defensive end, finally chased him down. That was all Marshawn Lynch for 42 tough yards.
The other thing I love about that clip, Steve, is that you were so amazed by the run, J.J. Watt's name became J.J. Wright, and it goes down in history with the clip.
Sometimes that happens. You're so involved in the emotion of the moment, and I'll say a name, and I mean, sometimes I'll remember it'll be a close name, and I'll grab a name from 25 years ago, and even my producer, who's been around for 20 years with the Seahawks, he'll get in my ear and say, "Who?" And I'll know I screwed it up. And I said, "Oh, what was that? Oh, that's right. Yeah." Okay. So a little minor thing, but yeah. So that was the first time. I didn't
think
even
that
remember
was the first time.
One.
Because I even went back to our 9th episode, and we started in the 2013 season. And we remarked about the fact that it was talked about on Sports Talk Radio that day about that holy catfish call. So I think I think that's the very first call that it came through.
Well, way to go. And thank you for filling me in. And you're right. It is a way of censoring oneself. I don't know if I can say holy on this particular broadcast.
You could say it, and then we could catfish it out with your own catfish.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I probably would have said holy crap, but instead I said holy catfish. And, I went to school at Georgia Tech, even though I'm not a Southern kid necessarily. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. But I went to school at Georgia Tech, and we had, kids who came from the country, way down South Georgia and Alabama and northern Florida, which is just like Southern Georgia. And, they had to pump in sunlight in some of those places. It was so far out in the woods. And these guys had sayings for everything. And one was funnier than the next. And I guess I probably heard it along the way somewhere, and it just sort of sank into the recesses. And that day just seemed like a good day to bring it up. And I have since said that, you can only have one of those a game now. And it really has to be a big play. It can't just be a touchdown. It can't be a really good catch. It's got to be something really spectacular, or a moment in the game that is just so overwhelmingly positive for the Seahawks that you can go with that. I don't even remember now, but obviously the NFC Championship game against the Niners here when Richard tipped that ball and it was intercepted by Malcolm Smith, and you can hear Warren Moon, my then broadcast partner, screech in the background. And as he always talks about, he said there was a screech heard around the world. But I couldn't see exactly what happened because it happened in the front corner of the near end zone. And the glass of our booth comes to a corner there, and I had to look through a couple of metal strips. And so I couldn't see initially whether it was an interception or not. And then I got the interception and went with it. But I don't remember if I said holy catfish that day. That would have been a good one for a holy catfish. But
I do think, because we've used a couple of them to censor ourselves through the show, I do believe that it was the interception, and then the other one was Jermaine Kearse's catch in Super Bowl 49.
Right. Yeah. There were a couple. The kick return by Percy could have been one of those as well. There are some. There are a few. I was trying to remember since I just talked to Tyler an hour ago, Tyler Lockett, whether that catch. Remember Russell kind of scrambling out of the pocket, rolling left early in the season. Was it against the? It was against the Rams.
Against the Rams. Yeah.
And it looked like he was throwing the ball away. And Tyler kept those toenails in bounds, and Russell put it in the only spot that only a semi-human, who is almost angel-like, could make that catch, and that was Tyler Lockett. If that wasn't a holy catfish moment, it should have been.
All right, in all your honest opinion, Steve.
Yes.
Was he really trying to put the ball there, or was he throwing it away?
No, knowing Russ, he was trying to put the ball right on the spot.
I thought maybe it was a lucky throwaway.
No, but the good thing about it was he knew that if Tyler couldn't get to it, nobody else would. So he would give his guy that opportunity. He he is phenomenal that way, to be able to make those kinds of throws. We talked, Warren used to obviously school me on quarterback play, and well, he should, because he's forgotten more than I'll ever know. But he always used to talk about throwing guys open. And Russell had that ability from very early on to put that ball on the spot where only his guy could get to it. That's why he throws only 6-7 interceptions in a season. Some guys will throw that in a game or two, but because he puts it so, in such the right spot, everybody thinks, well, it's because we run the ball so much and he doesn't have a chance to throw, but he really is surgical in his ability to put that ball on the money.
All right, out of the quarterbacks you played with, Steve, who would have the closest ability to match Russell Wilson in that sense, that precision passing? Yeah,
that I played with.
Yeah, sure. Or you can say
that I saw as well playing, because I only played with a couple of three quarterbacks. I mean, Z-Man was my quarterback, but remember, everybody referred to him as a bigger Francis Tarkenton back in the day. He was a left-handed guy. He could roll out, throw on the run. In fact, you guys know football, so our offense, Jerry Rome built that offensive system around what Jim did best. And what Jim did best was throw on the move. And so we built our offense around a play known as the sprint draw. And it was Jimmy pulling out from under center. Remember, back in those days, nobody ran the shotgun, really. Jim back out from center, turn and deliver the ball to then Sherman Smith or David Sims or one of our running backs in those days, deep in the backfield. And then that running back comes toward the line of scrimmage and then can move down the line of scrimmage until he finds that gap and then hit it and go. It's called a lot of things today, but in those days it was a sprint draw. And all or much of our passing attack was based off of that because Jim could roll out and throw so well on the run. Going either way. As a lefty, he was better going to his left, but he was equally adept at going to his right. And he made so many plays. And then he would also pull it down and run and pick up 15, 20, 25 yards. So, we were used to that. That was what our offense was built around. Mike, Holmgren, when he came in, it was Matthew. Matthew was a drop back guy. Matthew could protect himself and he could move around and he could run. And they had Seneca Wallace, who could be that guy if they needed him to be. But Russell is in a game of his own. There may be guys who can scramble better. Michael Vick was an unbelievable athlete. Colin Kaepernick, I saw him take the Seahawks apart in 3 quarters against the Hawks in that NFC Championship game.
Right.
And then late in the game, he depended on throwing the ball, and he threw the ball well until that last pass. But he was spectacular. And Lamar, what's his name now from Baltimore?
Yeah, Jackson.
Jackson. Oh my God, he's something like we've never seen. Quite that physical stature, as big as he is, as big a cannon of an arm as he has. Mahomes is a little more like Russ. Mahomes isn't put together like Russ is. Can't take the beating that Russell can, but he's so quick and he throws so well on the move. There were a lot of those great athletes. Hey, remember, Steve Young was a terrific running quarterback when he had to be, but he taught himself and learned under Holmgren and others how to be a great drop back passer. So, there are those guys in the league, but Z-Man was pretty darn good in his day.
Well, Steve, we really want to thank you for coming on and talking Hawks and talking about the origin of Holy Catfish and being a part of our episode 300 celebration. So again, thanks for making this happen.
Holy Catfish, guys. It was great being with you.
Steve Raible, the voice of the Seattle Seahawks, joining us on episode 300. I couldn't think of a better person to get on for show number 300 besides Russell Wilson, who probably wouldn't do the show anyway.
Right. I was stunned when you told me that this is the man that you had lined up for this. Very excited to talk to him, and he didn't disappoint in any way. Like I said, really great guy.
Yeah, and if you want to check out the video of that interview, I think we're going to put the video of it up at on our YouTube channel. So check that out there if you want the full experience. It was cool enough to, not having used the technology ever before with StreamYard that we used to record the episode. He worked it out.
Nailed it.
Although I think he did say that his wife made it so it worked out. So a huge thanks to her for making that happen.
Oh, for sure. Hey, man, it's a lot like my entire setup. Like this is all you, buddy.
You just leave it there. Don't touch it.
That's right. I try not to change a
Catfish
thing. I just come in and hit on, and then it all does what it does.
Well, going into the season, the Seahawks made some big cuts. We mentioned, no, not big cuts. They made some significant cuts, though, in terms of giving up restricted free agents with Brandon Jackson and Joey Hunt. Jordan Roos, who's been with the team for a while, let go from the team. Yeah. Him immediately picked up by the Las Vegas Raiders, so reuniting with Tom Cable. Mm-hmm. Another noteworthy move is Chance Warmack opting out for the 2020 season.
Yeah, and I didn't dig into that story, but from some of the comments that I had seen from it, sounds like his family had quite an issue with COVID, and maybe even had some losses in the family or things like that. Whatever the issues are, didn't feel like it was for him this year, and opted out. And while I'm bummed about that, because I actually liked his chances for making the team and being a starter. It's what he had to do, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think with any of these opt-out situations, any kind of digging into them, you're going to find out enough to go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And we might get more of that here in this next week because players still have some time to make the decision. And I could see a lot more players, if they're going to do it, wanting to, either they already know and we've seen the biggest wave come, or the few people saying, yeah, I need a few more days to that deadline. I want to have all the information before I make the decision right before the deadline. And so we could see another wave here coming in the next few days.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. It might be one of the defining factors of this season, really.
Oh, it's going to be. We're already seeing it with baseball, how not necessarily opt-outs, but how team members coming down with the virus impacting the season with the Miami Marlins and having to postpone games. So we could end up being in a type of situation where we just have to feel lucky that we got as many games as we did, or maybe they end up taking 2 weeks between games, and we really have no idea what this season's going to look like. I don't even know if I want to predict.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, at this point, it kind of feels like, especially for football, just the way that it's played, everybody's just going to get it. And then everybody's just got to kind of be ready for that. What week do you get it? Right. And they're just going to do it. That's how it feels.
You wonder, but you also hope that they can also learn from some of the other teams and notice that you've got to lock things down and be disciplined if you really want this to happen.
Right. Like locking Geno Smith in another room for an entire season just in case, right?
That's what they're doing. Yeah. They're not allowing Russell Wilson and Geno Smith to be in the same room. And really,
no, Geno Smith is like in a hermetically sealed chamber, right? Didn't they cryo freeze him or something and just make it so that he is just in a locked away, airtight, maybe in the seed vault up in Iceland, right? Tucked away somewhere like there, just in case. Or maybe he's on the island of, how do you say it? It's off of the coast of Italy. Is it Giglio or Giglio, something like that?
Is that where La Maddalena is?
Zero cases on the island among the residents that have lived there for generations.
Hey.
They just don't get it. So that's where you hide Geno.
Put Geno there.
Yeah, and his name even seems to fit, right?
Yeah.
Natalia?
Hey, we could put him out, just make a man-made lake out in the middle of Lake Washington.
Mm-hmm. And a lake inside a lake?
Yeah. I mean, a man-made island inside of Lake Washington.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
It would be kind of fun but if the island had a lake, then you would have a lake inside the island. Yeah.
Now it's like one of those Russian dolls, right? The nesting dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should do that.
Now, do you make it Survivor style? Does Geno have to go out there with just a toothbrush and a ferro rod and make it happen out on the man-made island, or does he get stuff helicoptered in and kind of lives in a nice mansion or something?
There's got to be a fancy Jimmy John's that's on the lake that just delivers by boat or something.
Jet ski, because that sounds more fun.
Is the NFL not thinking of all these great ideas that we're coming up with just on the fly?
They never do. I mean, there's only so much genius in this world to go around, and we've, coalesced a lot of it here. So I can understand how maybe the NFL doesn't have.
Because I've been thinking about this. Why even huddle up with the dudes? If you can put microphones in a football helmet, just have the dudes all have microphones. You call the plays in. And, if you're trying to eliminate as much risk as possible, that's another way you could do it. Come on, NFL.
I think this season it's going to be really interesting. Do you think any of the players that are being announced on the top 100 here in the NFL will opt out for this upcoming season?
Well, I think we may have had a player already opt out of the top 100, haven't we?
Unless a Patriots lineman made it.
Yeah, I thought maybe Dante Hightower would have made it in the top 100, but it doesn't look like he did.
No. And that's a way that I know this list is flawed, is that this top 100 thing is that somehow Dante Hightower is not on there, but Chandler Jones is, and one plays good and the other's just a compiler.
I was going to send this to you because I wasn't sure if you had a do better or not, but Maurice Jones-Drew was criticizing the NFL top 100.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what player's name that MJD brings up?
Did he bring up Chandler Jones?
Chandler Jones balled out again in 2019, posting a career-high 19 sacks and leading the league with 8 forced fumbles. Yet he's still not getting the respect he deserves, as evidenced by his exclusion from the top 10. He's an absolute game wrecker who's finished among the top 2 in sacks in 2 of the last 3 seasons. I expect more people to notice Jones's impact as the Arizona Cardinals improve as a team, and hopefully they'll start to give him the credit he deserves.
Well, good luck trying to notice that impact when it's not really there. I mean, the stats do lie in this situation, man. This guy, I mean, he wasn't even on the list last year, right? And now he's in the same breath as Bobby Wagner. Like, for reals? Like, I mean, that's a joke. The 2 that caught my ire the most was Chandler Jones, being 15, just on the list at all. And then Todd Gurley at 51.
Yeah.
He barely played.
Yeah. And
and he hasn't been good for a year and a half.
Right. And shouldn't this have at least some kind of projection of how a player is going to do this upcoming season?
Even just based off his last year, how is he one of the top 100 players? He can't be.
Was he in the top 10 last year?
So he's down 46 spots?
Is he down 46 spots? Yeah, I think that's how it works. I think he's down. So I think he was in the top 10 last year.
The guy who can't play anymore is 51. So that's neat. Anybody catch your ire on the top 100 here?
It wasn't so much I think you addressed the Todd Gurley one was the biggest one. Fred Warner making the list. I think he's probably one of the best San Francisco linebackers. So I thought he was a worthwhile addition to the list for the first time. DK Metcalf, it was cool that he made the list for the first time.
Felt a little high, did it not?
A little bit, considering, I don't know, did Doug Baldwin ever make it out of the 90s on the top 100 list ever?
I don't think he did, man. Yeah.
It's cool, though, because really this is kind of a measure of respect from your peers. And when I see Cooper Kupp at 89, that makes sense that DK Metcalf would be ahead of him.
But yeah, because Cooper Kupp's not that good.
The lowest ranked Seahawks player on the list, Chris Carson, coming in just 1 spot behind Frank Clark, which is kind of weird that he went down on the list from past season.
Yeah, I don't know that he had a huge year, but no. I mean, he did get a ring. So
got a ring, made the Pro Bowl for the first time in his career.
Right. Weird to see him, but nice to see Chris Carson get some respect, right? I mean, that's a name that is never brought up by the media in terms of discussion of great running backs. And I mean, we talked about, Russ being in his prime and, well, they don't do anything to support Russ. Well, I mean, hell's bells. You got, Chris Carson from the top 100 that he's handing the rock to. And his 2 flankers are, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and they're ranked in the top 100. Like that's a lot of weapons on offense right there.
There's no offensive lineman from the Seahawks, though, on this list.
No, but this is the year, I'm telling you, and it's only because they're taking the approach that I'd hoped that they would take year after year after year. that I feel like they might be able to actually get it solved. It's because they just brought in a bunch of dudes who have played a little bit before. Like they've proven that they can play a little bit.
Yeah.
And we just need to find the 5 of them that still can, right? Out of like the 500 options they brought in.
Yeah.
I'm very, very hopeful about that. I want it to work for the team, but then I also want it to work so that my theory is correct on how to get that done.
I want it to work out too. That would be, if we had some and they don't even have to be top 100 dudes to really make that much of a difference in terms of the 2020 season for the Seahawks. I'm trying to look at some of these guys that made the biggest jump. TJ Watt made a huge jump from last year into the top 30. I don't know if there's anybody that really jumps out at me as an egregiously overrated type player on this list.
Are you not on the Chandler Jones is totally overrated train?
I mean, I think he deserves to be in the top 50.
In the top 50?
Yeah. You put him in the Todd Gurley spot.
Are you watching football?
Chandler Jones is good.
He's a guy.
I think having him behind Zadarius Smith would be about right.
The fact that he's above Von Miller on this list is a
Catfish
joke.
Yeah, that's weird. So Preston Smith, the other Packers outside linebacker, I think you put him between Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. Put him a Smith sandwich with Chandler Jones.
So where do you think Russ ends up going? He's obviously in the top 10, which is revealed tonight, right?
Yeah. And I like how the Wikipedia page put him at number 4, just kind of slotted him in there behind Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Christian McCaffrey.
He's going to be behind the Mahomes. We know that.
He could be ahead of Lamar, but I also think that I think that Aaron Donald should probably be among the top 2.
Top 2, huh? Even after this last year for him?
I still think he's recognized as one of those guys. If I had to bet, I would put Russell at 4 or 5. And the guys who I think that the NFL would put ahead of him are Michael Thomas, Aaron Donald, Mahomes. Yeah, and then you'd be at 4.
Yeah, the only guys I can see that I think you have a legitimate argument to put him ahead of Russ is Mahomes, Lamar, and Donald. That's it.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas, there's no way Michael Thomas is ahead of him on that list.
They always throw a receiver in the top 5, though, it seems like, and he's the best receiver.
Well, fine. Then Russ can be 2. and both things can be true at the same time.
There we go.
They put Christian McCaffrey ahead of him. I'm going to be pissed.
This is the first time Russ is in the top 10, though.
I know. It's crazy. But it does feel like this is the year that Russ is actually getting the praise and attention that he should have gotten pretty much his entire career, right?
Finally.
Yeah.
Well, and
but it always comes, it's always the backhanded compliment, right? We always get with that, Russ, I mean, he is amazing. He does all this stuff. He carries that whole team and the rest of it's garbage. And but Russ is great. Like that's what we get now.
Yeah.
The team's great and that defense is amazing. And they just carry Russ. He's no good.
It's funny how it works. It's cyclical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the team doesn't do enough for him.
They're not trying.
No, they don't even. Well, we'll get a little bit of that with my do better, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you say we welcome some new members of the flock?
Hey, there are some. I love it.
We got one that came in just as we were recording.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Emmanuel Medhane in at $5 a month. So welcome to the flock, Emmanuel.
Appreciate it, man. So what are we going to do about pick'em leagues if it all goes sideways the season?
I think
because Emmanuel's going to be a part of the pick'em league.
So one of the things I was looking at, we struggled a little bit with Yahoo last year.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to make another switch.
It's baffling to me how there's not a site that has this down.
Now, even the ones that you pay for, we tried paying, I think we paid $600 one year just to have a site that we thought would function the way that we wanted to.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't perfect.
Yeah, you couldn't put in team names that were longer than 3 characters or some nonsense, right?
Yeah, I think it was 10 characters.
Right, because the internet is running out of space.
Yeah. You mean you can't, for this money that I'm paying, that you can't throw a couple extra characters in there?
Yeah. And you're telling me that your coding nerd can't go in there and just change that value?
Yeah, from 10 to 25.
That's an impossibility.
I know coding nerds. They can do that.
Yes, they can do that. They can do. And if it's he's out on vacation and he's already written the thing and is cashing his checks. Well, the cool thing about being a coding nerd is that you can change that stuff from wherever you are at vacation.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we didn't get shut out on episode 300.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks, Emmanuel.
Yeah, it's been an interesting off season, and it's been tough on people. And the idea that most of our members of the flock have hung in with us, and we still are getting a few new ones here and there, I think is a real testament to the listeners of the show, man. It'd be an easy time to not want to become a little flocker, financially speaking. I get that.
But what also makes a lot of sense to me is that we tend to see people coming back in throughout the month of August, because it is ramping up to our Pick'em League that we do. And because people, they recognize that we put a nice prize list together to give away to anybody who joins. And so, pretty soon I'm going to be putting out that list. I would like to hear from some people if they've done the Pick'em League through CBS in the past, because we had heard that people really like the Yahoo League. And then we found out that it was capped at 100 teams per. Because again, the internet's running out of space. Apparently, these constraints that are just arbitrary. Nobody's going to get more than 100 people together to have a Pick'em League. We can cap it at 100.
No, it never happened.
And I looked at the NFL.com one; isn't even set up yet. So we'll see if
they've made any changes. Because what was our biggest beef with them?
They didn't do tiebreakers all that great.
Yeah, and you couldn't ditch a bad week.
Oh, one of the cool things that I found out with CBS is you can assign. So if somebody forgets to make their picks, you can give them -1 from the lowest scoring team of people who did pick.
Oh,
which is kind of cool, because then it keeps people. If you miss a week, you just know that you're going to be.
It's not the end of the world.
Right.
You just had a bad week, not like a total blank.
So if somebody goes and picks 6 games, then you get 5.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I think that would be all right.
Yeah.
You forgot about 10 weeks in a row last year.
Last year was insane, man. That was an insane year.
Hey, don't have such an insane work schedule during the football season this year.
Yeah, we're going to see how that goes, because apparently everybody through Corona lockdowns was just waiting for us to be unleashed again. And yes, it's already shaping up to be busy.
Time for the Adam Emmert World Tour of Sawmill Visitations.
Toledo, Oregon, here I come this weekend.
Got an email in from Michael in San Diego. Might have to bring up the breakfast music here.
Yeah.
A couple of comments regarding the latest pod. First, I was listening to the episode on the couch and apparently fell asleep. Imagine my confusion when I woke up hearing breaking news about some Cardinals player who adopted 17 kittens and took them home to drown them in his bathtub. It took me quite some time and a bit of rewinding before I fully understood how that conversation started.
Yeah, context matters, Michael.
Second, how come only the new members of the flock get to hear their amazing accomplishments on the show? What about those of us who have been in the flock for a while? Even though I do claim the honor of owning the official meal of the flockers, I'm sure others would like to hear my greatest accomplishment, just as I would like to hear their accomplishments. Lastly, if dedication means a name change or a tattoo, and we know you didn't change your name, because who would change their name to Brandon and still spell it wrong? What is your tattoo? Do you have a big portrait of Russ on your back, or does your fandom and tattoo extend back further than that? Maybe a nice portrait of Jim Mora. Love the show and appreciate the work you guys do, especially during the off season. Keep up the great work. Go Hawks. From Michael.
From Michael, the glorious inventor of breakfast. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know that we needed to sing Michael's praises anymore, just because I thought his greatness just radiated throughout the universe and everybody just kind of felt it. and knew it.
You know, you're playing right into what Michael wants here. Like he wanted to email in and so he could have his ego stroked a little bit.
Yeah. You got to give the people what they want, Brandon.
I don't know. Or the other comment is then, so if we give in to Michael here, now everybody's going to be emailing for a little ego stroke.
Well, it's your favorite slippery slope argument. I know. So, yeah.
Michael is pretty awesome, though.
Well, there you go. See? And hey, if you write in, you know, maybe you'll get your ego stroked a little bit, you know?
That's true.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he made the effort. Now, he didn't make up any fake, terrible things about any of our division rivals, but that's a shame.
Yeah. Wasn't that what our call to action was in the last episode? To email negative things about our division rivals to gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com?
Yes. Fake negative things.
Fake negative things. Didn't get anything.
No, not a one. And you know who I blame, Brandon?
Michael.
Jamal Adams.
Yeah. Everybody kind of forgot about after.
Yeah.
Yeah. We put out the show and Jamal Adams signed. Rob and I did an emergency podcast.
Even the people that listen fell asleep halfway through and woke up.
Yeah. Michael's the only one that would admit to falling asleep during the last episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it was the Cardinals.
Understood. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what's my tattoo that I would have through the dedication in my life?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd rather do the name change.
So, yeah, right. What I'm hearing, Brandon, is that a big decision that would be permanent is something that would take you some time to mull over. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's and Michael just springing it on me is not how I go about these things.
I never guessed that. I never guessed that it would take some lot of hemming and hawing and time to make a decision on something like that. Yeah.
I think I would change my name to Betty White.
Betty White Schultz?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is White your middle name, or is it?
Because then I don't have to change my initials at all.
No. Oh, there's that.
I think my signature might actually still work.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's not permanent. I could change it back.
Now I see where your head's at. Okay.
Man, if I were to get a Seahawks themed tattoo, he brings up Jim Mora, and there's no chance. I didn't even like Jim Mora when he was named the coach.
Nobody did.
I didn't like the idea that Holmgren brought him in as the defensive backs coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the 2008 season.
Sounds right. I honestly don't remember.
Probably a Dave Craig, like a number 17.
Yeah.
I'm pretty tied to that number.
Oh, I probably would have gotten a Rick Meyer tattoo on draft day.
There you go.
I thought that was a genius pick.
That would have worked out.
Yeah.
Did you really like that pick back in the day?
I loved it. I did. I thought he was going to be good.
Well, your quarterback instincts weren't quite as fine-tuned back then.
Nope. It took a while. It took a while for my QB instincts to kick in. That's how I learned them, is by having painful memories such as that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was too young to really remember Dan McGuire, so didn't have to deal with that one.
I was just thinking about that today.
You thought about Dan McGuire today?
Well, Brett Favre's name came up in, I think it was an episode of Pro Football Talk. If they just let Chuck Knox make the decision on which quarterback to draft, the Seahawks would have had Brett Favre instead of Dan McGuire. And just think about how different the Seahawks of the 90s would have been. So they were talking about coaches who had turned around franchises. Yeah. And they were talking about how Mike Holmgren turned around the Packers franchise with Brett Favre.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just thinking about, pair Chuck Knox with Favre. And
yeah. Would have been interesting. I guess I didn't realize that was the same year. I didn't realize Favre and McGuire were the same year.
Yeah. It just took, because Favre went to the Falcons, and it was a couple years before
he got to Green Bay. How many years was
it before he ended up in Green Bay? Was
it was his
2?
second year. He only had to deal with 1 year of Jerry Glanville berating him. Yeah.
But yeah, they brought up Dungy's name and having turned around 2 franchises, but they left off Holmgren and recognizing him as coming to Seattle and turning around the franchise that had so many rough years after Knox left. But
they forgot the team in South Alaska?
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to do better and better at life, thanks to one of our folks who went into iTunes and gave us a review, says this is a very entertaining podcast.
Hey, all right.
That was it.
that could go a lot of ways. So I'm very excited that, we're at least entertaining.
Maybe they didn't fall asleep in the last episode like Michael did.
Maybe not. Hey, man, some people find baseball entertaining, and I've been told that is a sport that you don't have to pay attention to when it's on. Like, you put it on in the background, and you kind of consume it in bits as you do other things, or maybe take a nap, things of that nature. Maybe our show is baseball.
To some people.
Yeah.
But maybe not to Christopher Rolfe. Agent of Bolas coming in says, I'm listening to the Know Your Rival Rams pod right now, and I'm just curious. If the Hawks had a chance, would you rather have Wade Phillips and John Fossil over Ken Norton Jr. and Brian Schneider? I kind of do, he says.
Yeah, I think I agree with him, actually. Wade's done it defensively as a coordinator everywhere he's been, man. He's always put together a good defense every single time. And yeah, the special Fossil, dude, he's kicked Schneider's ass in so many times in special teams over the years that I think that's a clear advantage there.
The only concern I have is the clash between Pete Carroll and Wade Phillips. Like, if you were just assuming that Pete Carroll's handing the defense over and maybe being involved with the defensive backs, but letting Wade Phillips control the scheme and all that,
I don't think they'd have a problem. I think Wade and Pete would get along like peas and carrots, man.
Yeah.
They're both jovial, nice guys.
That's true.
I think they would work well together.
But they have very different defensive styles.
Sure. I mean, I don't know that it'd be terrible to have somebody shake things up a little bit.
It's not going to happen, though.
The Seattle scheme has been something that the league has kind of figured out. Now, the thing is even if they figured it out, you can still do very well with it. I mean, I listened to Chris Sims on Button the other day, his podcast, and he had on frat boy Kyle Shanahan in his flat-brimmed hats. And
does Shanahan wear flat-brimmed hats?
Yes, he does. He
Why?
does. And because he's a frat boy in disguise. That's what he is. He thinks he's a skater punk at the age of like 40, 41 years old. No, you're just a grown-ass man that looks ridiculous.
What's more ridiculous, a man of Shanahan's age in a visor or in a flat-brimmed hat?
Flat-brimmed hat. The visor is just poor taste. The flat-brimmed hat is a denial in the fact that you are now an adult.
Yes, at your age, you should know better.
Yes.
It's like the frat guy who wears his hat backwards and, is out in the sun, like covering his eyes with his hand.
Right. Exactly. But I listened to Shanahan talk about the Seattle scheme and all that, because Sims loves crapping on that and talking about how it's all been figured out. And he's like, well, yeah, but we run a lot of that, but with variations of our own. But the reason is that it's actually really good against the pass and then very solid against the run. And you have to do some very specific things to be able to take advantage of it. And it's hard to do. So even though everybody knows it, even your chief rival, it's still very difficult to beat. So I don't know. Maybe we do just need to upgrade personnel, Jamal Adams.
Do you think Tony Romo has finally stopped wearing his cap backwards?
Well, yes, because he's no longer on the football field. I think that was a take my helmet off, put something on my head situation, and would wear it backwards just to be able to see the game still better. That'd be my guess. Or, read the tablets better. That's just my guess.
So the brim just got in the way, but he wanted to cover his hair.
Or it just shows that he's a poor decision maker, like sticking with Dallas's entire career.
I was wondering if you were going to cover for a Cowboys quarterback entirely there. So I'm glad you turned that around.
I took a drive-by kneecap shot at him.
I want to do better and better at life.
All right, man. Well, we'll see what happens here with my do better. Fortunately, we're not an NBA podcast, so I think we're going to be okay. But my do better this week, Brandon, is for freaking China.
Yeah.
These guys, they're doing all these things right now that you're like, wow, thanks a lot, China. You need, the viruses, like that wasn't cool. Like we could have done better there. And then like this consulate stuff all seems a little hinky. There's some like spying stuff going on. But here's the one that really kind of pisses me off the most. Headline: Virginia, Utah residents report receiving unsolicited packets of seeds in the mail, reportedly from China. So now the Chinese are just sending random seeds to Utah and Virginia, of all places. That seems very random. Like, what are they expecting people to like plant these outdoors? And are they like an invasive species? Like, are they trying to take over the American continent through agriculture? Like dirty pool agriculture? It feels that way. This is some like clandestine, secretive bioweapon that they've basically shipped over to people. And my biggest irk in all of this too is that none of the news outlets have identified what the seed is. How hard is that? Get some expert. There's got to be a seed expert that goes, oh, yeah, no, that's the spotted knapweed. That'd be bad for your deal. Don't plant it. But no, they just go, well, we don't know what it is. Could be invasive, could not be, but just don't plant it. So for China, dirty pool, do better.
I was wondering if you're going to go to the seed thing. I almost interrupted to say that this issue about the seeds is very strange.
It's very strange.
The news aspect of it and identifying the seeds would be super helpful. I think my wife, though, actually diagnosed the reason for why they do this.
Okay. What
she believes is happening is that, so if you want to boost up your positive reviews on Amazon and that thing, you have to have verified, or on eBay, you have to be verified as having sent something. There has to be a tracking number attached to the order. So what's the cheapest thing that you can send? Seeds. It's easy. Throw a couple seeds in a package. But because it's an agricultural item, one of the things that people have identified is a lot of these packets are saying that they're earrings. So they're just getting a bunch of addresses together, sending out, cheap envelopes filled with not much in it because it doesn't weigh that much. And now they can have verified reviews of products because it has a number attached to it, a tracking number.
I actually had seen that theory floated out there, which makes it even extra skeezy.
You don't like it?
No, I don't like it. It feels like biological warfare, man.
I think it's economic warfare.
Or a little of both. Little column A, little column B, right?
I mean, I guess if the worst thing that can happen is that you grow some weeds, there's a lot of weeds out there already, dude.
Well, yeah, but like some of those weeds are bad. Like knapweed, for example. That thing is nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's Russian. See? So dirty communist weeds. That's what they are.
We don't need any more communist weeds.
No.
Not where I expected that we'd be going in episode 300.
Communist weeds?
It
feels fitting. It does.
Communist weeds need to do better.
Yeah. China and Russia trying to take us over with communist weeds
out of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, my do better is football related.
Okay.
My do better is for Mike Florio and this Jamal Adams trade, because he had one of the dumbest takes I have ever heard. And Florio comes up with some dumb takes sometimes. Yeah. We've had him on the show plenty with some of the things that have come up from Pro Football Talk over the years. But never in my wildest imagination could I have expected that the Jamal Adams trade to the Seahawks would be a signal as the end of the Russell Wilson era with the Seahawks. But this is exactly where Mike Florio went.
What are you going to do in the next 2 years? And if they give Jamal Adams a gigantic contract, if they give him close to $20 million a year between now and the completion of the 2021 season, or at the latest in the early 2022 offseason, that's when you have to ask, is the next move a move on from Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
I just think that we shouldn't assume, and this is my point, we shouldn't assume this is Jamal Adams, Russell Wilson, 5, 6, 7, 8 years together in Seattle as the two centerpieces of the team.
Yeah. No, Seattle's like New England. They'll do what they got to do.
It's going back the other way with the defense.
Right.
Because they won Super Bowls with a great defense. Well, a Super Bowl.
Should have been
won
two.
A second one.
Yeah.
But they won a Super Bowl with a great defense. The last 2 years, what have they gotten with this approach where Russell Wilson is the centerpiece of the team?
Yeah.
They lost in the wild card round in 2018. They lost in the divisional round last year against a Packers team they probably should have beaten. And if they had a better defense, they probably would have beaten.
Right.
So it's just something to keep an eye on, Chris.
Yeah.
It's something I'm very intrigued by. A couple of years out. We got a lot to worry about between now and then. Let's just not assume it's Jamal Adams and Russell Wilson for the next 7 or 8 years together in Seattle. It could be that it becomes Jamal Adams' team.
So the Jamal Adams trade, when you have to pay a guy at safety at the top of the market, there's no way that you can pay your safety top of the market money and also have a quarterback making top of the market money. No, if you're going to pay Jamal Adams, that means you're shifting entirely to a defensive strategy. You got to let Russell Wilson go. You got to recuperate those first-round picks that you let go in the Jamal Adams trade. This trade for Jamal Adams is the signifier that it's the end of the Russell Wilson era.
Yeah, those things have to be mutually exclusive, correct? Having Jamal Adams on a team and Russell Wilson on a team can't have them at the same time.
You can't have you can't even have Jared Goff and Aaron Donald on the same team and pay both those guys at the same time. That would be crazy.
No, and I mean, really, that signals that it's the end of the Jared Goff era.
No, it's because Jared Goff got paid later, so it's the end of the Aaron Donald era.
Right. There you go. See, no, this is idiotic. And first off, I love well, this is the fork 2 years in advance. Like, well, okay, Miss Cleo. Like, I can see where you're coming from here. Like, and then Sims to be like, yeah,
Mike, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, genius. The idea that you have a Super Bowl contending team that has both a leader on offense and a leader on defense. I guess that's never been done in the history of ball before, right? Like,
if anything, this signals that 2 years down the road, they may be moving on from Bobby Wagner. Like, I would accept that as a premise.
I love this. So, and then look what the Seahawks have gotten out of this since they turned it over to Russell Wilson. I mean, they lost in the wild card, then they lost in the divisional, while they were tearing it all down, while they were shedding all the contracts from that expensive defense, and a team that everybody expected to finish under 500 for the past 3 years. I mean, we've all heard those predictions. And what did they get out of it? They only got a win in the wild card or a winning season, win in the wild card round, and then a divisional round loss. Like, come on, man. They're improving every single year. And we're a half an inch away from beating the Niners twice and having the number 1 seed. But yeah, they're getting nowhere with this Russell thing.
So for Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, coming up with maybe the dumbest take imaginable in terms of the Jamal Adams trade, that it somehow is signaling Russell Wilson's move out of town. Do better.
Yeah, man. I think if anything, okay, number 1, this isn't like the Packers, right? In terms of Jamal Adams.
Remember when they got Reggie
Love.
White and it was only a matter of time before they moved on from Brett Favre?
There we go. But this isn't Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. This isn't Aaron Rodgers in Love, right? They're not playing the same position. There's not one older player and a younger hotshot that they're bringing in behind him to push him out to move on to the next deal, right? That's not what's going on here. So that's really ridiculous. I mean, the only thing that he could have made an argument for that would have made any sort of sense is that they're looking to be able to move on defense in a leadership standpoint from B-Wags in a year or two.
That would make sense.
That would make sense.
No, there's 2 things that Florio loves talking about consistently, and that's a quarterback or any player getting a percentage of the salary cap.
Yep.
And Russell Wilson leaving Seattle. Those are like 2 of his favorite topics. If he can find a way to work either of those into a conversation at any time, then it's money in
big win
in Florio's pocket.
Yeah. I do find it hilarious, man. Like, just the whole reason is he just wants him in his favorite team's stadium. You know, he just wants him in Minnesota. That's it.
Yeah, he wants Russell Wilson in Minnesota.
That's what he wants. That's the whole point of this.
I don't know if Russell Wilson could, can they pay 2 of the top safeties on defense and Danielle Hunter in Minnesota and have Russell Wilson on a team like that?
Well, it wouldn't be Russell Wilson's team.
Right. It would be Danielle Hunter's team.
Clearly.
Or Harrison Smith's.
Yeah.
All right. On to Better at Life.
Okay. My Better at Life and Skip Bayless this week is definitely not football related. I'm going way off the grid with this one. And that pun is intended. My Better at Life and Skip Bayless this week is for a couple in Tofino, British Columbia, Catherine King and Wayne Adams. You know, they have been thinking about this off-grid thing long before I have, and they had a very unique solution as to how to make that happen for them. So both being artists and not a lot of money, they just started collecting recycled items from like job sites and things like that.
Seeds from China.
Yeah, seeds from China, salvage materials, things like that. and they built themselves an artificial island like Brandon proposes for Lake Washington for Geno Smith out in the British Columbia that they call Freedom Cove. And it is 25 minutes to the nearest town via boat. They live out there. It's all self-sustaining, all their own food, water, the whole nine. And it's really eclectic and quite beautiful. I mean, it's really pretty amazing, everything that they put together and ingenious. And just mad props to these guys. So to those guys, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Now we just need them to come across the border and build Geno Smith Island.
Exactly. The Isle of Geno. I think that's what it needs to be called.
We need to get this done. Yeah, the Isle of Geno.
Yeah.
Now, can you have it in Lake Washington and still be autonomous, or do you have to build it a certain number of miles off the coast?
I think you have to go past the maritime border, like out, because there's like the maritime border, and then there's fishing rights that a country has. Like that's kind of their official like border.
Yeah.
I think you just have to go out the maritime border. You should know this. You're a Navy guy.
It might be like 25 miles out. That might be too far.
Maybe. I don't know. I know there's that micronation off the coast of England that they used to be like they put like pylons out in the sea where it was shallow, and they put these little huts on top of them basically, and they would transmit stuff radio wise during World War II. And it's passed between people. Like it was pirates for a while, and then some dude bought it, and they declared that a micronation.
Oh, is that the Isle of Man?
No, but I wish it were. I want to know about the Isle of Man, actually.
I thought it was up in that area.
I think it's in that area, yes.
I just know that it shows up among the downloads sometimes.
Yes.
And I wonder about it.
Yeah. So whoever you are on the Isle of Man, let us know.
Identify yourself.
And are there any chicks there? Or is it a BYOC thing? Like bring your own chica?
Maybe. You don't know.
Okay.
There's so little known about Isle of Man. It's like
the mysterious Isle of Man.
There's just not much information out there. It's like trying to find out where the origin of the gunner and special teams came from.
It's a good point. Forever a mystery. I mean, it's basically DB Cooper.
Wow.
Maybe that's where DB Cooper is on the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
And he is the one guy that downloads it. I believe this wholeheartedly.
And he actually came up with the term for football special teams, the gunner position.
Yeah.
He played it in high school.
It's all coming together. This is very good. This has helped good conspiracy theories start. Like, this is great.
The good ones, not the
dumb
ones.
We're half a step away from this being QAnon. Like, it's good. It's perfect.
You're not into the Q conspiracies?
Any conspiracy that's named after a Star Trek character that was omnipotent and kind of snarky, I have a hard time taking seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad.
I watched a video on it. Their little promotional video. I had to see.
You got to look into it.
It's fun.
It's about as fun as the flat Earth conspiracies. You just have to treat it as entertainment.
They're in range of one another for sure.
My better at life this week. Let's close the show with Jamal Adams as my better at life this week. It's kind of a sad reason why he is better at life, because he is dedicating his 2020 season to a young man named Bryce, who lost his fight against cancer at 17 years of age. But Bryce was a big Seahawks fan. Jamal Adams, on his way to the Seahawks, found out about Bryce's situation. And here's his tweet from Jamal Adams, says, and @Prez, you got to like that Twitter handle, PREZ.
Yeah, it's okay.
And Jamal says, may Bryce rest in peace. What a strong and amazing man. Thank you for the positive impact you left on me and the rest of the world. Bryce was a huge Seahawk fan. I will be playing for you this season. #live like Bryce. #Bryce strong. So for Jamal Adams, giving a shout out to a late Seahawks fan, but carrying on his name and dedicating the season for him, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I will totally agree with you on that. That is pretty amazing and a great first act as a Seahawk here. But yeah, let's get back to this @Prez thing for a second.
Okay.
Because I don't think he's better at life with this. Like, I don't think it's good. Now, I have some questions.
You have some questions around his Twitter handle?
Yes. Was he ever the president of anything?
Maybe he was the president of his high school.
Okay, but this is not a well-known thing by any stretch of the imagination. It's not something he's known for, right? Like presidenting in any way. Was it his nickname growing up? Did they just call him like El Presidente just because Like, because he just seemed like that kind of dude? Because I haven't heard any stories like that, so I'm going to go with no.
You know, it's funny that when I looked at his Pro Football Reference page, President was one of his nicknames.
But really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wonder where that came from.
I don't know.
All right. So if he actually had a nickname President, then I'm okay with it, I guess. I hadn't heard anything like that. So I was just like, this sounds like he just came up with it himself, like gave himself a cool nickname with his Twitter handle, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Pro
that's not
Football
good.
Reference, and it says in parentheses, President or J. I'm guessing J just short for Jamal.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
That doesn't seem as noteworthy, though, to put J up there as an actual nickname.
No.
Like President, that's a legit nickname.
Right. I think he should change it to El Presidente, though. It just has a cooler ring.
I feel like somebody's already got that one.
Okay. Hey, they're talking about people that opt out. I thought this was interesting. Damian Williams, running back for the Chiefs, starting running back, he's out skis for 2020.
Oh, wow.
Says, no, I ain't doing it.
Yeah,
which opens the door for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which really pisses me off because he could have been a Seahawk.
Yeah, another opt-out there. The other one that was going to be significant that sounds like it was fake news was Nick Foles. There was word that he was going to opt out, but then he said he wasn't.
Oh, okay. Neat story.
Closing this show with some momentum.
Yeah.
What do you say we pick it up right at the end of the show? Because Flocktimus Prime, he put together a, you know how we sometimes we'll do some parody songs?
Yeah.
We have one that was written by Flocktimus Prime to the tune of the Golden Girls soundtrack.
Ah, okay.
I think this will be the song that will lead us into our thank you for our $12 members of the Flock and Above this week.
All right.
Here it is.
Thank you for joining the flock. We talk Seahawks around the clock. Your blood bleeds blue. You're a 12 and a friend of the pod. And when we host the Lombardi, you'll be celebrating with the crew. Well, you will see the biggest Facebook gift party, and you'll smile real big and say, I'm glad I joined the flock. Thank you for joining the flock.
Keith Kedover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Annalisa Mickelson, a.k.a. Mrs. Doug Baldwin, New York, New York, undergrad, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, graduate school, Brooklyn College.
Eric Trench, rooting for the Seahawks out of Renton, Washington, graduated from Eastern Washington University.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
Hong Kong! Hong Kong! Hong Kong!
Kevin Stenjum, Keene, Texas.
Ella Esparza, Woodway, Texas, Yale University, and Sam Houston State, Eat 'em Up Cats.
Lisa in Seattle.
Vincent Parker, Emily Carr, University of Art Design, RN Collective.
Samuel Gelber, NoHo, California.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Leo Jose, Luleå, Sweden, from Luleå Eskimos and Rennes, France.
Paul from San Diego.
Jameson Holman from Murray, Utah, representing Mississippi State University. Hail State and go Hawks.
Hey Seahawkers, my name is Garen Taylor. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, North Idaho. Hashtag on the roads. Go Hawks.
Continuing on down the list, we have associate producer Dustin Mock, Christina in Manassas, Ross in Eureka, Craig in Camas, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, James in Linwood, Rowan Federal Way, Hector in Issaquah, Young in Anchorage, Becca in Manhattan Beach, Tim in Austin, Kathy in Eureka, Joshua in Seven Oaks, England, Brandon in Huntersville, North Carolina, Christian in Bergen, Norway, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Thomas in the Bronx, James in Beaux Arts, Paul in Minneapolis, James in Tukwila, Ben in the Greater Hawkdom, Keegan in Colorado Springs, Owen in Ashburn, Ireland, Jeffrey in Kansas City, Kari in Rochester, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, Eric in Seattle, Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Taylor in South Cle Elum, Lisa in Kelowna, BC, Dean in the Greater Hochdom, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, JC in Billericay, England, Jeremy in the Bronx, John in Norfolk, Nebraska, Eric in Clovis, California, Crystal in Oldsmar, Florida, Kevin in Sammamish, Chris in Spokane, John in Chehalis, Shannon in Florida, John in the Greater Hochdom, Shoko in New York, Bryson in Eltopia, Greg in Seattle, Ryan in Kent, England, Ben in Wrexham, Wales, Joshua in Cantor, New York, Kenneth in Hutto, Texas, Mario in Seattle, Seth in Tacoma, Jeremy in Moses Lake, Cora in Ditters, Deutschland, Jeff in Monroe, Warren in Dundee, Oregon, Chris in Austin, Jose in Chicago, Amy in Squim, Marcus in Potts Point, New South Wales, Preston in Phoenix, Nathan in Bozeman, Montana, Joseph in Vancouver, Ivy in Renton, Corey in Vancouver, Taylor in Spokane, Jesse in Sultan, Jay in Bellingham, Immortal Wood Designs, Ryan in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Darren in Stafford Court, Virginia. And now continuing down the list, first names only for everybody supporting this show. A big thanks to you as part of episode 300. TJ, Mike, Emilio, Ed, Jason, Michael, Josh, RJ, Tim, Terry, Patrick, Ross, Mark, Clinton, Nathan, Alistair, Craig, John, Kofi, Emmanuel, Chad, Pater, Cameron, Aaron, Nathan, Jason, Smells Like 12 Spirit, Jesse, Banked, Dave, Brendan, Scott, Steven, Jordan, Christopher, Lisa, Carla, Randall, Richard, Sendilia, Jerv, Leslie, Justin, Luke, Maddie, Dennis, Jack, Jill, Gerald, James, Mark, Jesse, Craig, Peter, Mike, Marcus, Anders, Morley, John, Bulldozer, John, David, Jeff, Josh, Matthew, Ryan, Lee, Jeffrey, Clemens, Tyler, Barbara, Roy, Quentin, Corey, Ted, Andy, Tony, Leod, Scott, Henrik, Santiago, Shane, Matten, Jason, Aaron, DK, Oliver, Tyson, Jason, Santiago, Randy, Michael, Stefan, Samantha, Andrew, Steven, Alex, Mason, Vincent, John, Thor, Bill, Gary, Nathan, Jane, Kentaro, Steve, Nicholas, Jerry, John, Jeremy, Michael, Peter, Nathan, David, Pam, Johanna, Barry, John, Joe, Randy, Pat, Alexander, Russ, Nicholas, Tanner, Maurizio, Chris, Cameron, Robert, Alvaro, Glenn, David, J, Robert, Raffi, Mike, Martin, Gavin, Andrew, Leland, Jason, Tom, Catherine, Pat, Ray, Nick, Nathan, Tom, Mark, Michael, Taylor, John, Brandon, Kiana, Brendan, John, Thomas, Harry, Matthew, James, James again, Tyler, Henry, Jared, Michael, Adam, Andrew, Anton, TK, Joseph, Levi, Katie, Martin, Gail, Vincent, Aaron, Eric, Tim, Adam, Charlie, Mike, Matthew, Alan, JY, Eric, Michael, Brett, Steve, Harshad, Doc, Mark, Josh, Brian, Christopher, Benjamin, Joshua, and on PayPal, Merlin, James, and Paul.
I'm glad I joined the flock. Thank you for joining the flock.
All right, we did it, Adam. Big episode 300. We got our thank you for joining the flock song by Flocktimus Prime. We had Steve Raible on the show. We got to talk about Jamal Adams. Just a big show overall.
Dude, okay, that the Golden Girls parody that Flocktimus put together, that was truly gold, and I'm totally impressed with that. The only thing that was a little disappointing is I was just wondering what word they were going to choose to rhyme with flock, and it wasn't the one I was thinking of. So.
Yeah, I think I'll put the lyrics in the show notes too, if anybody has any questions about of what they were hearing in any particular part. But
yeah, I mean, the word I was thinking of was close to the word used, clock.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.